December 11th meeting of the Carmel Mountain Ranch Sabre Springs Community Council. I'm calling this meeting to order. I'm your chairperson, Eric Edelman, and our first item of business tonight is to approve the agenda and the minutes from our last meeting. So do I have a motion to do that?
Motion to accept the minutes. Second.
Second. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, did we do the agenda and the minutes in one there? Yeah, we did. That's fine. Unless there's any strenuous objections from the crowd to the agenda, we'll move on with that. And the minutes will be posted on the city's website. There was some sort of glitch with them, but we got that fixed now. So be chairman for the Park and Ride project across the street.
All right, thank you, everybody. So what I wanted to do is provide an update on what's going on with the current Park and Ride across the street. As many of you probably know, there was a what do you call that, contingent offer to buy it in order to convert it from a park and ride to a high-rise apartment building. So the city passed a resolution last summer that said if the zoning could get changed, upzoned, that the builder would put at least 15 affordable units and at least 45 units, so a third of them basically being affordable. If the zoning does not change, could not get a zoning change, then there's less numbers approved. I can't remember the exact number right now. So this August or September, somewhere in that time frame, there was a planning commission meeting where they heard they went through and approved the initiation to study the ability to build on top of there. So there's a subcommittee, and this committee voted against that. I think there was one vote in favor, if I remember right. There were some folks that went down to the city, to the planning commission meeting, spoke about why we opposed the project. Don't need to reiterate those. They went ahead and approved it anyway, and so what that means is that the builder submitted their plans that were a bit more refined and different than what they had shared with us during the previews. So what they submitted was a 76-foot tall apartment building, 4 stories, 50 units inside. That has gone through the first round of cycle review comments from the development services, and so each one of the disciplines, environmental, architecture, stormwater, fire, etc., all provide commentary on those plans. So I have the first round of cycle reviews, and I just double checked with Michael. Those are public, so we can find a way to make them shareable or quite lengthy. The bottom line is, from my take, is that they just basically put in the first round of plans as kind of a test, because there's a lot of stuff that was missing, like the stormwater and a lot of things like that that they've asked for in the next set of plans. There were some comments about what is the, how does it fit in with the overall community? The height, the biggest thing here is already 40 feet tall. It's just Jefferson. There's nothing zoned like that in this entire area. Of course, there's going to be parking. There's some parking concerns where they actually want to take away 2 parking spots in order to put turnarounds in there. Concerned about the street parking. One of the interesting ones was the gates. You need to have 20 feet of clearance so that you don't have backups on the street for people trying to get into the gate. So there's a lot of comments in there from the DSD, but these cycle reviews, there can be many of them. But this is the first round where we've had a reasonably complete set of plans with comments from the city. As part of that cycle review, they asked for feedback from the committee. I submitted the letter that I sent to the Planning Commission outlining all the reasons why this is not a fit for the community. So we get to go through that again in this next cycle. So I exchanged emails with Scott and Tyler. New Point. That was New Point. New Urban West and New Point. So confusing. Asking what their plan was. And so they're going to basically make some plan revisions, and we're going to talk again in January. And so then we'll schedule a subcommittee meeting to go over those plans, hopefully before they submit them to the city again, and actually give us more of a chance than just adjusting the sore thumb and having input on color and style. So we'll see how that goes in January, and I'll keep people posted. I think that's good enough for now. Are there questions about it? Go ahead.
How do we find out when the Planning Commission meetings are to be there and represent? I mean, I would like to ask them several questions, but I always find out afterwards.
Right. So, from my personal experience, I think it's like every. Michael, do we want to take this one, or do you want me to just answer it? I got it.
Sorry, I was joking. Planning Commission meets Thursday morning downtown. Sorry. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Brins. I'm a senior planner with the City of San Diego's Planning Department. The Planning Commission meets every Thursday morning beginning at 9 a.m. Downtown in the City Council chambers on the 12th floor at 202 C Street. I don't recall offhand if the schedule is posted online, but the next meeting is tomorrow morning, and I believe it's the last Planning Commission meeting of the calendar year, and then we'll meet again in January.
When's this gonna be up?
This particular project was.
We want to know where can we find the agenda, so that we can see whether or not we want to attend a particular meeting.
Right, the agenda is posted online on the City of San Diego.gov, and then there is a link to the Planning Commission under boards and hearings. But you could, I mean, you could honestly just do a search term for San Diego Planning Commission, and it will take you to the city's website where the agendas will be posted.
And it's in advance, right?
Correct, yeah, all of the agendas have to be posted at least 3 days in advance, and they're typically sent out a week in advance by staff.
Can we get those publicized around here so that we can all go?
Well,
So anything related to a specific development project has to follow the noticing requirements. So if it's a specific development project, property owners within 300 feet of the property are noticed, are given a mail notice, and then if it's over a certain size, then it's a newspaper notice, and then the planning group is also given a notice of hearings as well. So.
Yeah,
That
so,
does nothing.
so what our experience with the first round was, the builder had kind of given us an estimate. They kind of know they know months in
They know
advance. They know months in advance when they think they're going to go up. And so we were kind of notified, hey, we think it's going to be in two months or 3 months, and then it got slipped. But the official notice is only like a few days beforehand. So, but I think that during those meetings, they have like a non-agenda thing at the front, so there's an opportunity to go in and take 3 minutes, even though it's not on the agenda, to speak about the projects. Is that correct? Yeah.
So Carmel Mountain United has a website, and we're going to be working very closely with Brian and his group, and we will notify you. Okay, so if you're on our email list, whenever there's a meeting, whether it's this one, the park and ride, golf course, and we totally agree. We need to have 100, 200 people. We need to fill that chamber every time there's a meeting.
Yeah, and the last one I believe was August 15th, and we knew that date probably a couple of months in advance, so we were preparing that letter to kind of list the items. So hopefully we get some level of communication in the next round. Any other questions regarding the project? Move on to the next item. Thank you.
It gets approved, the golf course is gonna get approved. This is the gateway for changing all of Carmel Mountain, because this has to be rezoned also, just like the golf course has to be rezoned. So I'm just encouraging everybody, I know you're all in for the golf course, but if we let this thing go and it gets approved, you can kiss the golf course goodbye as far as I'm concerned.
it's the Trojan horse.
So I just want to, encourage people to be as enthusiastic and committed to fighting this thing as they are the golf course, because this is really, and this is a little bit farther ahead, I think. So again, if this thing gets approved, then the golf course pretty much is going to be on its way.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
It's
just wanted to give a quick update. I know plenty of you guys have reached out regarding there's about a strip.
Why don't you come and get the microphone and wait a minute?
Good call.
I'm loud, but not that loud. I'm not loud enough to cover the sounds. I know plenty of you guys have reached out in regards to a strip of Highway Road that has been left unpaved. And I explained to some of you guys that it was kind of, we were waiting on some Caltrans permitting and whatnot. We're excited that the permitting went through and we're able to move forward on the repaving of Poway Road between the 15 and Silver Springs Parkway. So just wanted to add that in. Per usual, I know, exciting. And per usual, please feel free to email our office. We take your emails very seriously. So if you guys don't have my card, I'll leave a few more up in the front. But overall, I look forward to getting your guys' emails. Does anybody have any questions pertaining to City Council? Yes.
Yeah, we've heard numerous times that we were going to get some kind of response back as far as the golf course operating in violation of conditional use permit. We've never heard anything back, and I'm just curious that it seems like they just keep doing business there, and they're not supposed to be operating if they're not operating as a golf course under the terms of conditional use permit.
Are you referring to the utilization of the clubhouse?
Exactly.
I think that, if I'm not mistaken, I think that with the
Maintenance agreement?
yes, sorry. I believe that with maintenance agreements, they still allow for the utilization of the clubhouse through a certain timeline. I'm not sure when. I can double check that for you. Actually, I can say that.
They have a maintenance facility, so they don't need the clubhouse for that. But they just
Right,
have
I believe,
weddings and-
I believe he's referring to using it for weddings and hosting events there.
and that's
if-
maintenance.
Go ahead.
Yes, let me go ahead and just double check some, emails that I have and see if I have a better, clear answer for you. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe that they have access to utilizing that for events, and events that were already booked.
How do we know what that is? I mean, he booked a year in advance, and every weekend he's got something going on there, but in the meantime, the golf course just keeps getting worse and worse, and every so often they trim it back and we complain enough. But he's obviously in violation of the conditional use permit, so what happens? Is he getting fined? Is anything happening, or it's just he's going on his merry way?
I'm not sure of the current condition of the golf course. I'm not sure of the specifics of that. You're more than welcome to also reach out to the code enforcement staff member that's attached, Karen Lindsay, if I'm not mistaken. Her information, all that is on the maintenance program. I know that's kind of disseminated. If you would like that, I can give that to you as well. Yeah.
So Brittany, not to pick on you, but you think you could pass it on to Mark or Sue that tonight you were late, but in 4 years from now, when you've got 2,500 more cars coming out of this development, think how late you're gonna be the next time.
Any other questions?
HOA. I think the HOA has sent out in mailing details about the maintenance agreements. So there's about the maintenance, there's supposed to be a change under that agreement.
It was pretty easy.
Yes, between the city and the golf course, they worked out a deal, a maintenance agreement. And supposedly the golf course is being maintained per that agreement, which was basically, if I recall correctly, they were to cut back brush within 50 feet of homes or something like that. It was something that was disseminated a few months ago. The HOA, I sent it out. I think your CMR United sent it out. So that's, as far as I understand it, that's how the golf course, or how the clubhouse continues to operate its business. And Brittany can find out, and please let me know if there's a cutoff date on that, so I can email everybody how long they're allowing this to continue operating.
The operation.
Operation of the
Okay.
clubhouse, please.
Yeah,
Yes.
will do.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can pull that one down.
So, moving on, and sorry to skip around on the agenda, we're not supposed to do that, but maybe we can have one for us and one for you, and there's a button on the bottom, right? Just give it a minute, I think. This is Bruce Bergman. He's volunteered his PA system for us, so that's why we have amplification. Thank you, Bruce.
Hi everyone, I'm Carly Keats. You sometimes see me hiding below a table or behind a screen. So now you can see my face. So Community Relations Manager. And Jonathan couldn't be here tonight, he apologizes, but he will definitely be here in January at the subcommittee and at the community council. At least he plans to, pending any sickness or something crazy. So he can, if there's any kind of like in the weeds questions, I'll do my best to answer them. But we can always take your information, I can get a response for you, or you can hold it till January, however you prefer. But I just want to kind of summarize the past month. So we did submit plans to the city in November after we met with y'all on the 13th. And the city is going through all of that check. So it's the initial review check. So basically they're just checking to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's, and it's for completeness. So it's making sure that everything that they require in the initial review has been submitted. So once that goes through that review, then it'll be finished, and then the plans will be sent to Eric, and it'll be sent to the community council, which we assume will probably be in Q1, so first quarter of 2020. So that just means that it's the initial review is complete, and then it'll still have tons of iterations of changes, everything's subject to change, but that's kind of where it stands with right now. There's just a lot of back and forth and making sure that what we submitted is complete for the requirements of the city. And like I said, it's a really long process, a lot of iterations, like probably be another year or two before we get to city council, and you all now know how to get to the planning commission and city council, and all of those updates will be told to the council and then told to you all. But we'll be here every month, 2 times a month, to answer any questions you can. Sometimes it'll just be me, so bear with me, and I'll try to answer everything I can. If not, happy to quickly get a response for you and get back to you. I have tons of business cards, and you can also go to our website, cmrvision.com, and do it that way too. So.
Okay, so what we're going to do tonight is the board, I'm sure, has some questions that are left over from last month, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people do our best to be expedient about this, so everybody has plenty of time. I don't want anybody to feel like their time has been cut short. So with that, I will open it up to questions for Carly and New Urban West from the board. Joseph, do you have any questions or comments? Dan?
I'm good right now.
Okay, Ryan?
So just a quick question about parking. I think it was mentioned before that there's a lot of cars around. Other proposals for other developments have suggested perhaps parking is not necessary for some of these new developments. But even the apartments that are here today house parking, but still yet residents park along the street. If you're cramming in more, how do you imagine what impact of that parking situation, the reality of it, will affect the residents that claim?
Yeah, so the city, I don't know if you all have heard about transit priority areas, TPAs. So if a project is within a half mile of a TPA, which is the bus rapid transit here, the city has allowed developments to reduce parking. There's no parking requirements. It's down, the minimum is now 0. We are technically in a TPA, but let me be clear. We are not going to go to 0. We understand, ooh, getting counted down. Do I need to run? What's happening? Is there going to be confetti? So let me be clear that we are not going to do a 0 minimum parking in this development. We understand that parking is different up here than down on C Street in downtown San Diego. We get that. So we are going to make sure that there are going to be ample parking for apartments, townhomes, you name it. Okay, so just want to make sure that's clear. We are not going to use that 0 minimum standard. And then if it's related to traffic, so traffic is kind of related to the amount of cars, that's all going to be studied in the environmental impact report that the city commissions and the city puts out, and there's a full public review period where you can read everything, submit your comments, the city reviews it and replies back to you with the response. And there's a very extensive traffic study in that environmental impact report.
Okay, I would like to kind of, we've got Michael Prince from the planning department here, and Carly's here from New Urban West. I had a question, and I think it's probably more relevant to Michael, and so everybody's okay with that, we'll sort of float in between those two. People have questions that are more appropriate for the city. The project, as I understand it, has been submitted under an expedited process. And Mike, can you answer that and explain what that is and how that works?
Yeah, give me 1 second, just so I get the name right.
Yes, thank you. I believe it's infill, affordable, well, yeah, I'm not gonna try it either.
So I just wanted to bring up my notes just so that I have this. I'm gonna start by sort of offering a couple of caveats. My role is senior planner in the planning department. I am not in the development services department, and I am not an expert on the development review process. Though I've reviewed projects and I'm familiar with the development project managers and all that stuff, it's basically not my job, so please don't hold anything I say as the letter of the law for the city. With that said, the project is in for what's called the Affordable Infill Housing and Sustainable Buildings Expedite Program. It's a long-winded way of basically saying that if you're providing a certain amount of sustainability features or affordable housing on site, and what we mean by affordable housing is deed restricted so that only families of certain income levels below the median, as per an agreement with the Housing Commission. If that housing is being provided on site, it basically allows the applicant, the developer, to have a faster review time for city staff. So basically what it means is that my review, rather than taking, I think here the first review is 20 business days. So it basically reduces whatever the normal time is that city staff has to review them and moves that up to sort of a lesser time. So it essentially moves it up to the front of the line, so to speak, for city staff to actually complete their reviews. And it's not just long-range planning, it's also land development review staff and development services, traffic engineers, fire, public utilities, sewer, water, all of the reviewers, map check, that have to review that. So that's essentially what it boils down to. So the long story short is that it's just a quicker review process for providing affordable housing on site or a certain amount of sustainability features. In this case, the applicant is proposing to provide 10% of the total units on site as deed restricted affordable, and that's how they qualify for this program.
Okay, so Carly, does that impact anything you've told us in the past regarding how long you expect this to take in terms of when it does eventually make it to the city council?
No, it doesn't, because it's a really, really long process, very iterative. I mean, I say 1 to 2 years, could be longer. I mean, that's a pretty big gap, right? A year, 1 to 2. So no, it doesn't change the timing. It really doesn't. A lot of times people do these expedite programs because time is money, right? And that every housing unit you put out costs a lot of money, hence why we have an affordability crisis in California. So by doing this, it helps to keep those costs down. So it's one of those things that really kind of helps bring housing costs down. And that's why the city of San Diego started this program. That's one of the reasons.
We'll come back to you, Alan. We'll come back to you. I got your name. I got you on here.
Can I add a point of not a clarification, but just an add-on point to that as well, is that it doesn't change any review times for the public review process for the environmental impact report or the decision-making processes as it relates to planning commission and city council. All of those follow the normal hearing schedule requirements and the public review requirements for the environmental impact report or whatever environmental document gets produced. Those are standard, there's no reduction in those times.
So it's basically given priority at development services and the review cycles between notes and feedback are shorter than typical.
Correct.
Okay. That's all. Oh, sorry, Mark.
So forgive me, I'm not familiar with the normal process. I was under the impression that all new housing projects had to have an element of affordable housing in San Diego, or the builder or developer could pay. Is that not correct? And if it's not correct, cool, right? But if it is correct, then they had to do 10% anyway. What else did they have to do to qualify for this expedited process?
So the short answer to your question is that the current, the city council as of yesterday just adopted changes to the inclusionary housing regulations, and I'm not gonna be able to pretend to speak as to what those changes were made. But under the rules as of the day before yesterday, the requirement is 10%, the inclusionary housing requirement requires that every development project in the city over, I believe, 4 units or 10 units, I don't remember the exact number, but over a certain number of units, has to provide 10% of the units on site, with the option of paying an in lieu fee. So if they were to pay the in lieu fee and not build any of the units and just pay the fee into a fund, they do not qualify for the program. That's the difference here. Michelle?
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to parking for a little bit. So your comment was that you're not going to have the zero minimum, and that you plan to provide ample parking was your expression. What does that mean?
So I don't have the exact figure, but I do know that we're gonna do the standard, what we typically do in these types of settings, which is usually approximately 2 cars per unit, per household. Which, a house has a 2-car garage, same type of thing.
Okay, thank you. So I have 3 questions from last week that we didn't get to. One, Jonathan keeps talking about the tunnels that he's really excited about. I'm a little bit nervous about the tunnels because I think that they're gonna attract homelessness and other things that we might not want in our community. So my question is there any plan to police those? Or is there any plan to light them, to police them, to do anything with them other than just have them be there?
Not to my knowledge, like specific policing. I do know that with our, landscaping plan, lights is part of that. But I don't know any specifics about to how much light or what type of, material would be used that would maybe prevent graffiti or something. I don't know. I don't think we're down to that nitty-gritty detail yet.
This is a concern I have. I would like that documented.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
My other comment is that I'm hearing that we have Jefferson, our 4-story building in our community, and that's kind of the prerequisite, is that the right term? Precedent, thank you, for the buildings that you're proposing. However, there are many people in our community that I've spoken to that didn't realize we had a 4-story building in our community, and I believe, my opinion is because it is so well placed. And that, what you're proposing is not very well placed, in my opinion. And so, my personal opinion is that the proposal does not meet the feel of the community because of the placement of the buildings.
Yes.
So I would like that documented.
Well, thank you.
And just kind of a wrap-up question. We got the presentation last month, 1,200 units, and a fair amount of detail, not complete detail. What has changed between last month's presentation and what you actually submitted to the city?
Nothing has changed, and we have started receiving comments, but nothing has changed to the plan since what we presented to you all on the 13th and what we submitted. Everything has stayed the same. And as a reminder, that presentation is up on our site, cmrvision.com. If you haven't had a chance to review it or you want to re-review it, it is up there. Under latest updates, the page latest updates.
We kind of asked similar questions to what I'm going to ask. The area of the golf course that isn't getting buildings, is there anything, assuming you get the exact plan that you asked for, is there anything that's going to prevent that remaining area to almost immediately be developed into more buildings? Or who's going to own that property, and are there going to be any restrictions or hindrance of right after all of this goes up, and we have all this 70 supposed open area, that we're going to sit through another one of these again and see 50% of that or more disappear?
Yeah, so the land that isn't being developed on, it's still sight to be seen, right? So we still don't know based on the plans how that's all gonna pan out. We've talked, Jonathan has talked about whether, the city would take a portion of it for the Parks Department, or whether the new HOAs would maintain it. That's all stuff that's still being worked out. So we're still not sure, that's kind of my short answer, but I think there was kind of a second part to your question.
Yeah, on that, at what point in the process would we know some details like that?
So we would start to know some more details probably after this first initial review, because we are, talking with the city about the plans we submitted and, if it makes sense for them to add it to their parks program. So we should have a little bit more clarity Q1 2020, so January, February, March. Hope that answers that.
Mark.
So regarding parking, and again, I think the plans was anything 4 stories, or was it all just 23?
No, yeah, 2 to 4.
2 to 4, okay. Does that include parking or underground parking? Or just the same level?
It hasn't been clarified.
Okay, so if it's 4-story, will that include parking? So it'll be 3 stories of residence and 1 story for parking?
My understanding, it hasn't been clarified. But good question, and I'll make sure to take that back.
And then sort of a question / comment to folks too is, I almost rather an HOA take the extra land if this goes through, because if the city maintains it, parks, then they could flip the switch on us. So, I mean, I don't know that I can do that or anything, but CMR United and all that, like if this continues to go through, let's make sure that we know who is best to maintain that extra land moving forward. So, because I think you did really answer his question about,
Yeah, I think
70% of it's not being developed on or whatever it is. Okay, but so your project finishes, all of a sudden there's still this open land.
Oh,
and
yeah, the
city goes,
zoning, sorry.
Yeah, the zoning,
Yeah, yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
oh, hey, look at all this extra land that's still there, and look at like, there's 100 yards of open space,
Yeah.
let's put some more apartments on it.
So
How do we prevent that?
Yeah, so our plan only has zoning changes for the development areas. So the rest of the land would stay as it is currently zoned.
So the next developer come in and change the zoning just like you.
Sure.
Well, that's,
Which is owned by the city, that's huge.
Well, that's my point, man.
yes, that's the point. And that was the point of the question, and we have a community plan, obviously, there's several attempts being made right now to amend it, which includes community plan, zoning, and all that kind of stuff, and so, as far as I understand it, and Michael, you could correct me if I'm wrong, down the road, open space could be potentially rezoned again, correct?
Yep.
Right, well, the short answer is yes. However, there's varying levels of open space. So there's publicly owned open space that is sort of dedicated as part of the city's multi-habitat preservation, or the multi-species conservation program, like land that is basically determined to have environmentally sensitive lands and significant biological value. There's usually some sort of deed restrictions on those properties, or conservation easements, or just held in public trust. So a lot of those lands are, while in theory anything could change, there's a higher threshold to change certain land that's dedicated parkland per city standards, and deeded over to the city, versus privately held open space that is maintained by the property owner.
So the best way for us to be protected against something like that would for there to be deed restrictions and/or, it's like Chikorita Creek, they can't do anything with it because of environmental.
Yeah, so without knowing all of the details of sort of the environmental value of the land, I can't speak to sort of right now like what the plan would be or what the recommendation would be from the city. But in addition to sort of planning department staff, like development services and Parks and Rec staff will be evaluating, including open space division, planning staff that is responsible for MSCP reviews. They will all be evaluating that to determine if there is property that has significant value, to determine what the appropriate mechanism to maintain that as open space. Whether it's just keeping the existing zoning or changing the zoning or going through a different process to provide some sort of conservation easement.
Thank you. I will add that the current submission is available for viewing at the City Department of Development Services. That was in my monthly email. And if you need that link again, or need that address or the email address to make the appointment to go see what's been submitted, you can ask me to, if you didn't receive that email, you can ask me to get on the list and receive the email, and that has all of the contact information that you need to see what's currently submitted. It is an incomplete submission at this point, so none of us have been to view it because we'd rather view a complete submission versus incomplete and then have it change and then have to go look at it again. And because it is incomplete, copies are not available at this point. Once the submission is complete, the board will get a copy, as I understand it, right?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions from the board for?
Just one quick follow-up. You mentioned that rezoning is only going to be in the development area. Is that, is that defined by all, or just where the buildings are sitting? You just...
Yeah, so if you look at our presentation in November, you can kind of see those like yellowish beige, that's kind of the development area.
Okay.
That's the area.
So it's even smaller than the whole area?
Correct, because there's that buffer we talked about, and then all the other areas that are not being developed, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board questions, comments? Okay, to move on to public questions and comments. John, you just made it in. Do you have anything?
Did you guys talk about guarantees for parks and things like that?
Well, that's kind of what we were just talking about, and it's sort of unclear at this point, but yeah, that's what we sort of were covering there. Okay, so at this point, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Let's start with 2 minutes, folks, and then if there's more time, and if you have more after, then we'll come back. But I want to make sure everybody on the list gets a chance to speak, and then if that prompts any more questions from the board, that we have time for those. So first on my list tonight is Troy Dom, and I'll hand you the mic, Troy.
Thank you, Eric. I'm holding the community plan, and I just wanted everybody to see that on page 99 of the community plan. It states in here there are numerous archaeological findings been identified in the development of our community. There are 23 of them. Of those, 4 were considered significant, 3 were mitigated. And there's a 4th one that is very interesting. So it says here, the final site will be retained in open space as part of the golf course and will be preserved according to accepted practices. So this is a cultural site dating to the San Diego period. That states in here late filling northern Digueño activity. And it's a very significant site. And if you look deeper into this, there's more facts online. It's actually, the site itself has been redacted from the record. And the reason why they redact it is because they don't want people digging for artifacts, for possible human remains. So what's unique about this site is that it's up high. We know it's up high because it's identified as being close to the former water tower. This is all before the community was built. And I did some research trying to find where that water tower was. But it would certainly be high in all of these whole areas that you're developing. So, you know, for the record, I think the city needs to look into that. You would have access to the redacted information. That needs to be identified. Doesn't necessarily need to be shared, because we don't want people digging in this area. But clearly, as it related to an environmental, cultural thing, you can see this in the original community plan, page 99. And I want all of the board to be aware of that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So that will be analyzed as part of the environmental impact reports. It's a CEQA area of review. I'm forgetting the terminology off the top of my head, but it's cultural resources and archaeological resources that the development will have to analyze and address as part of the project.
And bear in mind, it was not, they were unable to mitigate it last time.
Right, and if that's the case, you know, again, that'll have to be reviewed by city staff and evaluated and addressed by the applicant, you know, prior to going forward.
Thank you. Good info. Jim Peters.
Thank you, my name is Jim Peters, I'm homeowner on number 1 Fairway. I've been for 29 years, and I was blessed to be asked by Troy to help out with Carmel Mountain Ranch United when we first started a little over a year ago, and this place closed down. And you know, it's just, I'll be honest, I've been kind of quiet to this point, but I think it's a travesty, candidly. I mean, I think it's ridiculous what you guys are asking to build in our backyards. You know, we all bought here with the intention of living on a nice green golf course for a reason. And you know, when New Urban West first came to us and said they wanted to come and work together with us to enhance the value of our community and the overall, you know, quality of life here in this neighborhood, I don't see that happening with adding 1,200 condos. It was one thing to maybe show up and offer to build, you know, 300 or 400 nice homes that could add value to the homes around them, and you know, at $750,000 to $1 million each, you know, 400 homes is, you know, I mean, over $200 million. That just wasn't enough. You know, they had to go for the big billion. You know, with 1,200 townhomes in a small area, they're going to add. I mean, we've got 655 and up homes going in on the DoubleTree. We've got another 600 right next to them behind the old Albertsons. We got 12,000 new ones down in Mira Mesa. I mean, you're not going to be able to get out of your driveway before you get on the freeway in 5 years. And not to mention the dust and everything else when they start building this thing. It might take 2 years to start building, but you know, it's going to be dirty for a long time. And you know, they're the only ones facing $600, $800 million in revenue as a result of it. I think it's absolutely wrong. I think the city shouldn't even consider zoning change for this. And my question for New Urban West is, how did you guys ever go from a few hundred homes to 1,200 2 to 4-story townhomes with no single-family residences being offered for sale when you're done? What's the reason for that?
Not really sure a good answer. I'm being honest, right?
Yeah, bottom line.
No, let me just mull for a second, right? So, you know, I think there's a couple of factors, right? We're always trying to, you know, manage kind of 3 factors, you know, a triangle, right? So it's the community, it's the city, and it's our investors. And we have to manage those 3 as best we can. And this plan is the best we can do to manage those 3. And the city is really looking at a housing crisis right now, and this really helps them meet those RENA numbers, those housing element numbers that you all have been hearing about. How they, you know, our last presentation we showed, you know, 108,000 need to be built in the city of San Diego. We are in the city of San Diego, so you know, these are in this next cycle. 108,000 need to be built. So that's one component. You know, and then the other 2.
But
So.
600 or 800 units wasn't enough. I mean, you know, at one point you came to us and said 1,600 and then dropped it to 1,200. I mean, it's the numbers again. I guess my challenge to all of us as neighbors and family in this community moving forward with this and CMR United is we need to fight for how close, how tall, and how many. Because that's all we got. We don't want them any closer than 100 feet. We don't want them any taller than 2-story, and we really want 300, not 1,200.
Thank you, Jim.
Well said.
Thank you, Jim. If there's anybody that decides they want to add their name to the list while this is going on, you can, well, we can probably accommodate a couple more, but I need to get through these first. And if there's time, I'll come back to you. So signal me if you want to. Your question may be answered in the course of all of these other questions and comments. Kurt Carlson is next on the list.
Well, I'm on the subcommittee, excuse my voice, I'm losing it, for this group, and we've been through all the meetings, and what took so long to show the housing types? I've heard Jonathan mentioned a few times, hey, we've gone 12 meetings, now we've got 16 meetings, now we've got 18 meetings. But we didn't see the housing types until the 17th meeting. I mean, it really was, the workshops are just a sham. I mean, the way they were organized, the way that they were lacking information.
No, I think that's strategic.
We saw this every workshop, right? So you'll notice it's recreation, social, these are the plan elements. Social, recreation, open space. It doesn't even, it has housing here, but it's not mentioned up there. And all the workshops that we had focused on buffers and edges, landscapes,
Yeah, that's their strategy. Yeah.
parks and open space, amenities, trails, landscape connectivity. That's what you heard 3/4 of the meetings.
Right.
You didn't hear anything about, again, listed on the bottom, but keep in mind, those items on the bottom, housing, $800 million, maybe more. So there's no discussion of housing types. The direction from the Planning Commission, engage the community in a good faith effort. That means being transparent. That means, what are we thinking? What are you guys thinking? It could never come up. They wouldn't even tell us the housing numbers. They wouldn't tell us what the market rate was for the houses to be sold. Be innovative and creative and balancing uses. That means no same old, same old. I've been doing this for 35 years, and this is same old, same old. It's not being innovative, it's not being creative, it's filling everything up just because we're in supposedly a housing crisis. Are we in a housing crisis on here when it takes you 30 minutes to go, 2 miles? I don't think so. High quality development. High quality development that's going to block all of our views where we live now. And the housing types don't even match.
Kurt, we'll have to come back to you for any more. I want to get to.
I have 2 minutes of
He's got 2 minutes of Kathy's time too.
Oh, okay.
We did a number of wall boards. They did. They had their landscape architect. And we talked about, this is in August, we talked about setbacks and buffers. We talked about, we want to review the traffic. We want to protect views, avoid wall of housing. What's the clubhouse? What's going to happen to the clubhouse? What are the alternatives for feedback and choice so that we can have a say? It wasn't offered at any of those meetings. Did anybody hear those? Okay, on September 24th, talked about more parks, guaranteeing parks. Are the parks really going to happen? I've talked a lot about open space. I'd like to know if that submittal that they put into the city is guaranteeing a community parks. And we need those parks. Take advantage of the views, ADA compliance, buffers again, providing imagery that's more relevant. The images they showed were horrible for landscaping. I mean, you're going to get excited about that you haven't seen what looks good. And then in October they talked about we want similar housing next to similar housing. We want consistency of housing types to match up with the existing. What about the traffic impacts? What about the views? We are a planned community. Keep us a planned community. And then the other things, I know I'm running out of time here because I went through all our meetings and everything that we had. They talked about feasibility of the potential housing locations, and they showed those blobs in October. You remember that? And so they rated them high, moderate, and low. But what about feasibility ratings for all the parks and the trails and everything? Why don't we get something like that so that we have some more say? Because parks need to have accessibility. They need to have equitable spacing, for the different areas. Everybody's got to have a park, and we've got a whole golf course here, ladies and gentlemen. The flat areas, parks need to go in flat areas. And then the other thing was the setbacks. In every meeting we talked about setbacks. They mentioned 50. We said 75 to 100 if possible, because where the trails are going, that's taking up land, so then you should get extra land because of that trail. Because now you got not only trail, but you got a building that's going to be closed in, so that's not going to be fun. And then the last thing I want to talk about really quick was, these blobs I'm just talking about, more parks need to be shown. And where these red areas are the added hole. They added more development from October. So they went from 7 holes to 12 holes. So I don't know if you guys are aware of that. If you're not, be surprised. And more's coming. And the last thing was, real quick, is that we didn't ask for this. This was not what came as a result of those 3 workshops. If any of you went to those workshops that were held, this wasn't asked for, and this is what we're getting. So how does that work in a workshop? We're just shoving it down our throats. So you need to be mad about this, and you need to be at that next city meeting in January when it happens. That's it.
Alan Hahn, I gave my time. You gave your time to Kurt, okay.
You should listen to him. He has
Well, I'm happy to, that's why I.
Look, you have, go, no, you got.
Okay. You want the mic?
No. It's helpful for the camera.
Oh, yeah, we've got recording happening.
I reviewed the project submittal this morning at the city's offices. Now, they are incomplete because they haven't been reviewed by the city. They have a few things in that you might want to know about. First off, they're requesting maximum height deviations from 30 to 38 feet and from 40 to 47 feet for the 7 zoning changes that they're asking for. Secondly, they state that they're not providing any parks, but they want to consider the trails and open spaces to be the parks, but they're not proposing any community parks. The city requires a 300-foot public notice package to be mailed out to all persons within 300 feet of a development. There is an option in the city regulation that can be done by newspaper notice instead. They're doing the newspaper notice.
Where do you get a newspaper?
For whoever gets a newspaper. That's all I have at this time.
I'll yield my time to Troy or to Jim or anyone else, but I agree with everything tonight that's been said about stopping the development completely. And I'll yield my time.
Mike, I'm pretty loud. Carly, don't take this personally. I was a risk manager for 40 years and I insured the city of San Diego and many other cities. Shame on you guys for not looking at Urban West, that they were in Orange County. You are Red Riding Hood looking as a wolf. And you know what? They're asking for 48 feet, going to 40 feet, they're going back and forth. It's time to go to the city. Because all of our meetings here aren't going to do anything unless we've got these shirts on and we're out there. Follow the money. See where the money is. Look who the politicians are that are putting this forward. A lot of them aren't going to be here after January 1st. There's going to be new elections. I bet those pretty little boys are going to want some suits and some of those women that are being bought out. And you know what? I have a problem with it. Transparency, we haven't had any. The triangle, this is the community. We feel like we've been run over by a truck. The last time we had a fire in here was an hour and 15 minutes from Seabridge Lane to 15. Now you're going to put others in there? Tell me if my family, my kids, and my neighbors are going to burn getting out of here. Because you know what? It was an hour and 15 minutes for your little transportation center there for me to get to. That's BS. Sorry. I look at Orange County and I look at the other developments and I say, there's no transparency. It's all about money. It's the bottom line. You come in and say, we're going to do this many homes. You don't. Well, we're going to give you 50 feet. Well, where's that 50 feet? And we're not going to dig. Well, there's shale there, folks. There's rocks below. So watch what happens when they start putting them up. And you know why they want those extra feet? Because they can't go down. It costs too much money. So you know what?
I'm gonna be at city council meetings. I'm ashamed and feel sorry for the previous planning people that put their hearts and soul into this and planned this community for what it is. Because you know what? That's a slap in the face by the politicians that are saying, our planning committee was wrong. It can take more than this. Well, you know what? Here's the biggest thing. All of them are on golf courses in Rancho, Santa Fe, and other areas. This is going to set precedents too, because you know what? We have a lot of golf courses that have financial problems. So if they're going to build these townhouses here and these apartments here, it's going to go everywhere else. I think you need to notify those big boys. It's going to be a problem in their backyards too.
We have the misfortune to live on the 17th fairway, which is going to have 48 feet in height, and 4-story. Those are 4-story proposed apartments, and then we are very concerned about the access. Who determines the access, and when will we find out about it? We live in a cul-de-sac, a very small cul-de-sac. So 240 cars or whatever it is in the apartments. Who determines that? Are we going to be impacted on both sides?
Is that a question you'd like them to answer?
It is a question I'd like them to answer.
I'll answer. The applicant proposes an access plan, transportation plan that has to be reviewed and signed off by transportation development staff and fire department staff that are the reviewers before it is moved forward ultimately for the city council to make the final determination on the development, including the access plan.
So do you know when that will be proposed, or when we can see?
So again, I think similar to what Carly mentioned earlier, it'll probably be sometime early next year when the submittal will be provided to the planning group. That'll include the proposed access to the new development in conjunction with any changes to the city streets proposed as part of the development. So the short answer is you'll see it next year, and then you'll also be able to see both fire department's comments and transportation city, like basically the city traffic engineer's comments on that to evaluate, sort of as part of your evaluation of the project.
Will there be community input as to the access? We are very concerned.
Yes, they will have, the planning group will, can choose to comment on anything related to the project. The planning group's charge for the city is to evaluate projects and their input in conformance with the general plan, community plan, and land development code and the regulations and the regulations addressing land development, and providing their input to the city council. So everything associated with building heights, open space areas, zoning, density, traffic, fire access, all of those things are evaluated by the planning group in terms of making recommendations, making a recommendation overall on the project, as well as specific recommendations on design that then gets forwarded to the city and ultimately the city council for consideration.
So the community that shows up at the city planning meetings, our voices will be heard as far as recommendations for change?
So yes, absolutely. If you're speaking, the city council and the planning commission before that, and city staff will hear your comments and will take that into consideration in evaluating the decision.
Are you representing the planning committee here?
No, I'm representing the planning department. I'm the planner who's assigned to review this specific proposed community plan amendment and associated development project. So
our voice here or council here, are you going to pass on?
So in the sense that I am aware of what the community's input is, then I will transmit that to both my management and the development project manager. But ultimately, in terms of the council representative is here in the back, and it's her boss along with 8 other people who will ultimately make the decision as to whether or not, and as to ultimately what happens to this project is their decision. Staff provides a recommendation.
Are you going to document?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's part of our job. That's why we're here. They make a proposal to the city makes comments on it, they give it to us, they ask us for our input. We listen to you and incorporate that into our feedback to the city as it relates to, like you said, land development code, zoning, community plan, etc. So that's essentially how that works. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but we will be weighing in on this, and we're your neighbors, so we're listening, and we'll do what we can. So Kathy was at the end of your.
Yes.
Thank you. Susanna Kravitz.
I have to commend everyone who's spoken before me. You all are very good speakers and have made some amazing points. I want to make one final point, which is that whilst we have opinions here, the main decider is the city council, the planning commission. That is who makes this key decision, and what they're going to make that decision on is multiple factors and also the impact report. The number one thing we have on our side is the impact report. Once we have that impact report, we can see the impact it has on schools and the environment, traffic. That is our only short way to fight against this, is to show that how the detrimental impact that it has on the local community. And 1,200 units is a 5-fold increase in density. That is humongous. And so the thing is, the reason they're doing this density is because of the fact it's so expensive to build on very steep land. So that's why they have to do so many units. Otherwise, they wouldn't get their money back. But the reason that we need to go right now in terms of fighting is getting that impact report, finding that information, and then communicating to the city council and to the planning commission how we feel. Also, we need to communicate to the mayor, Kevin Faulkner, and Councilman Mark Kersey. They are the ones who are the elected representatives, and they're the ones who vote into place the planning commission. The planning commission is not voted into place, but those two representatives do control that. So Twitter is a fantastic tool. You guys, every one of these elected people have Twitter accounts. We should all use Twitter. If you not everyone here is used to it, but log in, email, phone, and call these people, as well as show up. Once we have that impact report, we can use that as our way of understanding the impact and justify our opposition. Because right now our opposition is based only on the fact that we don't want homes here. But we don't have the numbers to show the impact it has on us. Once we have that impact report, that is our main tool. That's it.
Folks, actually, I'm going to sort of reiterate a couple of things that I heard tonight that actually I put something on next door, but I just want to ask, or actually just bring up a couple of things. So, Mr. Prince, you were late this evening. Why was that? Is that traffic related?
So, just for a point of clarification, I was only a couple minutes late.
Question
No,
is,
I
were you late?
I'll take that up with my supervisor, but so, you can draw any inferences you want in terms of that, but I had an assignment at work that I needed to complete, so.
Well, the reason I bring it up is that it's obvious that the infrastructure that is in place right now is completely lacking. If you sit on you sit on the 15 every morning on the way in, and every night on the way out, trying to get out of here in the mornings, traffic's horrendous already. The infrastructure's not here to support any more housing anywhere in North County. To go a little further, as I put out on next door, this is bigger than just us here, because, as was mentioned earlier, every golf course in all of the county is now subject to the same kind of issues. And that means that basically, I'm actually looking to move because of it. I bought specifically at a golf course 2 years ago. So a year into it, my dream house is now a POS, okay? So as far as I'm concerned, you can determine what that means. What it comes down to is that my wife said, you know what, no more golf courses. We're not buying on a golf course. That means basically every landowner in the county, or maybe even in the state, can lose value by buying on a golf course. In fact, I think it's probably the wrong place to buy now. If you want to view, don't buy on a golf course, because they might be jamming a 4-story unit building right behind you, like behind your house maybe. I don't understand how this could be a planned community, and yet, for some reason, just arbitrarily, capriciously, you decide that, yeah, we're gonna change the zoning, it's not gonna be agriculture anymore. We're gonna build 4-story buildings there because, you gotta answer that for me, all right? So, because what? Is the zoning that was done 30 years ago no longer good? And that means that either you guys are inept or just some kind of fraud that's going on. So I'll let you guys answer that. Is it inept or is it fraud that's being committed to take over what we all paid extra for to be on, and is just considered, yeah, we're just gonna do it. There's gotta be a reason behind it. So somebody said earlier, follow the money. I'm really suspicious as to why it would just all of a sudden, for 30 years, or prior to that even longer, been open space, and now all of a sudden, it's ripe for building when it's $1 billion project. Thank you.
Do with that what you can, Mike.
All I can say is that, well, one, I'm not the applicant, so it's not my decision to make. The proposed amendment was initiated in front of the Planning Commission on July 25th. The reasons that staff supported the Planning Commission are outlined in that report, and you can read that report, it's online.
But you supported it.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, but we're running short on this. Okay, I've got people that signed up. I'll come back to you if there's time, Mark. We can't, I mean, we're trying to maintain. Thank you. Sam.
Hi, Sam Rasul. I'm a homeowner, real estate broker. A couple of quick points. I want to talk about your triangle, and I want to talk about demand. My opinion is I don't support any development at all. I can tell you right now, what's currently there is absolutely hurting homeowners. I'm dealing with multiple sellers who are getting hit on their home values who are selling on the golf course. There's not a week that doesn't go by that someone doesn't call me and ask me how much is hurting me, and I have to sadly say it is hurting you. Then they'll ask me, okay, well, what will my home value look like with the current proposal? And my answer, if I'm being honest with them, has to be it's not going to help you. Now, talking about your triangle and demand, maybe the city can, has anybody in the city even thought about what demand is really out there? Because I can tell you, being on the front lines, when people ask me what's going to be developed, and I tell them condos, apartments, they say, oh, bummer, I would really love a single family home that's new in the area, because it matches what's here. So when we're talking about your triangle community, that's what they want. They want single family homes because that's what's here. And then two, profitability. I get it, more units is probably more profitable, but if the city is really looking at what's wanted and what's really being asked for by the consumer, it's not what you guys are proposing.
Sent to me, City of San Diego General Plan Housing Element that is redone every 8 years. Are you part of that process?
Not specifically, no, but I sit next to the person who.
Okay, so every 8 years they come out, so there's a draft that's out right now that you're finalizing. It says, hey, this is San Diego's plan to address, San Diego needs 109,000 units to address everything we talked about in the last meeting, right? And then on page 12 of that document, they go on to state adequate sites inventory. And I just want to bring up that the city has already stated in this draft that the inventory for the 6th cycle housing element demonstrates that the city has enough sites zoned to meet the city's RHNA target of 107,901 new units. Wow. I just hope we're using that to say, look, the city knows we need houses. They've already identified zoned areas that can support that. So our take should be, why is it so important to change our zoning when they already have zoned areas that can meet the demand? Yes.
Thank you, sir. What was your name, so for the record?
Mike Sperry, S-P-E-R-R-Y.
Thank you. Mark, you didn't have a question? Okay. Thank you. Brian?
Yeah.
And then I have to get to Rick Smith for a subcommittee report, and okay, well, maybe probably doesn't have it.
So, just a couple things. So when this did go to the planning commission, one of the planning commissioners actually voted against the project, who had worked on this back in the 80s. Actually, a lot of the planning commissioners worked on this project, and they thought, from their architectural builder mindset, I'm interested to see what this could be done, what could be done here, kind of a science project. One actually recognized in our community plan that was worked on so hard. So we at least have one person who actually gets it on the planning commission. Secondly, the fire risk was brought up. Very important point. This is a very high fire risk zone, right? That whole thing over there can go up in flames. We talked about the evacuation here. When we had the other side, the golf course that's over there, the only thing that's really holding that up right now is the evacuation routes. It's, when these fires hit here, they hit fast, and it's very hard to get out of here. People are having their insurance canceled. So how do people get insured on newer homes? People are already getting their insurance canceled now, and the rate's jacked up. What's preventing investors from buying these condos and then just renting them out? Because these are essentially going to be smaller units, typically bought by investors, which is really the housing supply problem we have in this city, is investors like real estate trusts or private equity buying up these homes, or people flipping the homes that were affordable. There's not really, the affordable housing is manufactured by investors. So is there going to be anything that can prevent that? When you buy the house, you have to live in it for a couple of years. And then the last question I had was, where is it actually documented that AR11 is a holding zone? Because one of the commissioners had said that. And it just baffles me that it's a holding zone when it's a planned community, as this is AR11 for this use. So I know I made 2 points. I had one question for you about the investors, and I had another question for you about the AR11.
When you say investors, do you mean the question about people living there versus renting out?
If I live here and I want to go buy one of these units and I want to go rent it to somebody, right?
Right.
So I have some extra cash, I want to go and spend some money and have a retirement income. Like what Sandstrom wants to build his retirement plan with, right? So what's stopping a bunch of investors, or even like Blackstone coming in and buying up a boatload of units and then turning around and renting them to people at market rate, but that they can increase every year?
Well, there are, at the state level, there are rent restrictions on how much you can increase them year over year, right? That recently passed. But in terms of who can buy them, if it was age restricted, then anyone who's 55 and up can buy them, and there's a bunch of other qualifiers in there. If you're younger than 55, you have to be taking care of someone and things like that. So if any of it's age restricted, that would be something that would, make a person have to buy under those requirements. And then if it's, if you're wondering about using it for short-term rentals or something like that, that's all HOA.
No, I'm not going to a regular traditional rental, not a short term.
Okay. It would be per the HOA on how, those would be. Is my understanding.
So no restriction on investor buying?
I don't know the answer to that fully, but that's just my answer.
I bought a house in Winchester back in 2003, and that was one of the restrictions, because there were so many people buying houses in Temecula and all that.
Okay.
Just because by the time it's actually built a year later, they're going up $10,000 a week, right?
I'll look into that. So honestly, I don't know any specifics about that, but I will definitely
A
look
lot
into
of
that.
builders have that.
Generally,
Okay.
that's the case for the first 2 years or something. It's
Yeah,
not,
real estate
it's not
is
forever, but
There's something that prevented people from doing that.
at least at the builder, whoever builds, if this gets built, whoever builds it is not going to want investors buying up huge chunks of it and then renting it. But eventually, I think most HOAs don't have too many restrictions on how many units in the project can be rented, so.
The city could mandate that.
The city
Or,
would.
yeah, some of them are no more than 25%.
Right.
One person can own more than 25%.
Okay.
Depends on the owner occupancy rate
Well,
and the HOA.
when we get to that stage of the process, we'll certainly consider that.
Sorry, I think there was a question from.
Yeah.
If you know that one.
The purpose and intent of the agricultural, the AR11 zone is within the municipal code, chapter 13, article 1, division 3.
Say that again, please.
I looked it up, so that I got those numbers right.
I'm pretty impressed.
I wanted for that.
I don't want it to sound like I'm too impressive.
I wanted for
So chapter 13, article 1, division 3. Now, essentially what there's a statement at the end where it sort of talks about And here I'm just gonna paraphrase a little bit, but it's really preserved for either agricultural uses or very low density residential uses. But it's also identified for, identified for future development and urban intensities. So the way that the city has used that in practice in other areas, notably within Torrey Highlands, Black Mountain Ranch, the North City future urbanizing area, as well as in Otay Mesa, is the community plan will establish a land use designation that would allow for future either commercial or residential development at higher intensity, but it will maintain the underlying agricultural zone. And this is getting super wonky, so I apologize to everybody else. But essentially what it means is that any future development application is going to have to go through a discretionary review and ultimately go to city council to rezone the land and then evaluate everything that's in the community plan to ensure that it's consistent. So that's typically the case where we don't have clear, detailed information at the project level, and would require sort of a future discretionary action with the rezone to allow that. That's where that's sort of the connection where commissioners on the planning commission were saying AR11 is a holding zone. In certain instances, that is, in my opinion, an accurate statement in terms of how it's used in certain areas of the city.
So you think that applies in this case?
No, in this case, I would say it not, because those were actually in the plan, right? So if it's part of the community plan, this is a holding for future use, which that's not the way our plan is written. So.
Also, the driving range was zoned residential, and that was part of the golf course originally, which would support the fact that if it was a holding zone, then why wasn't it zoned residential in the first place?
Yeah.
Right.
So again, I don't want to make it represented as though that the AR11 zone was a holding zone in place for this specific project. I was just referring to how it's been used in other areas of the city and how characterizing it as a holding zone, in my opinion, is not inaccurate for how it can be used.
Thank you.
But just to follow up, the land use designation at the time the community plan was established for private recreation golf course, and the appropriate zone that was established or determined at the time was, I think it probably was slightly different because it was pre the 2000 code update, so it's I think A1, and then they just found a corresponding zone as part of the plan code update.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for the question, Brian. Okay, so Rick, I assume you don't have an update from the
No
site?
report, but there will be a meeting in January, on the fourth Tuesday of January, which is January 28th.
Yes, and that will be emailed out. And again, if you're not on the email list, you can see me after, and I'll make sure you are input on their. I forget the name of it, but it was in my email, and it was something the city put on Nextdoor, where they were asking for your input on future development in San Diego. So that's something I can send you again, and follow that link and let them know what you think. Okay, at this time, no old business, no new business, no action items, which moves us on to adjournment. Thank you all for being here tonight, and